What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex. In this video, I want to talk about the Game Wars. Excuse me if I'm not normally my loud self, but I did the whole stream and people are asleep and all that jazz. But I want to talk about just my overall thoughts on the show. And, I'm recording this maybe 20, 25 minutes after it ends. So I've kind of given my time to just relax and think about the show and say, at the moment, there was a lot of negativity, in the chat towards the show. And here's what I'll say. I think the show was uneven, but I do think it had its moments. And that might seem like a cop-out, but as I've said kind of before, because I'm into as many games as I'm into, it doesn't take a lot to please me, right? When you show off Mafia, and Mafia looks good, and you say summer 2025, right? When you show, even Borderlands actually looked really good. I kind of forgot Borderlands was even shown at this point, but, they kind of sprinkled announcements throughout, and it definitely started strong, right? Like Witcher 4 and just having that, I guess, be there in the first place. That was quite the surprise. Split Fiction. I might say right here and right now, Split Fiction might be like my game of the show. There was a couple of games for sure, but Haze Light and It Takes Two and A Way Out, like Split Fiction looks freaking awesome. And it really combined a couple great aspects, and I'm spending time on this on purpose because not only did it look great, but they also showed things of substance, and then it had a release date. The issue I would say with the show that I had personally, and maybe it's just the way I'm changing, the way I'm getting older, and I kind of am looking for something a little bit different than maybe I used to. For me, what makes a good reveal nowadays, my life right now, is having the game have a good amount of stuff. So think of Split Fiction, right? You see a ton of gameplay, a lot of variety, but it really shows you what the game is. It looks good. It's got to be good, right? So it's got to show you what the game actually is. It's got to look like a good game. And then it's close. That game, correct me if I'm wrong, is one of the earliest games releasing out of any game that they showed the entire year, right? Crimson Desert, they almost end the show on Crimson Desert and they say, here's the release date, or so, they said something with the word date in it. And then it says late 2025. We didn't even actually get a date for Crimson Desert. So, that to me is what makes something good. And, I'm not saying I'm opposed to other things. I think something like Okami, like seeing an Okami sequel, that is pretty legit. You can't discount how big and how influential a game like Okami is. And so to know the team's back together, the kind of creator, and they're making a sequel, those kind of things have its place, and they're the big eye-catching things, right? Seeing The Witcher kind of is like that, where it's okay, it's coming. You and I have known it's coming, right? Or we may have, and to know that Ciri is the protagonist, I think that's definitely good. That's something that we kind of speculated, but you didn't know for sure. Hearing Geralt at the end was kind of cool, right? And doing kind of a classic Witcher trailer. You think to the Witcher trailers, at least of Witcher 3, battling some sort of monster and kind of that journey. That's kind of the blueprint of how they do it. So to see that, the issue with that I would say is just it's so far out, right? You're looking probably at least 2, if not 3 years until you get The Witcher 3. And while it is a good trailer and it follows, again, kind of the classic of what you expect from a Witcher trailer, it's not doing anything vastly different than what they've done before. It's still a trailer. It's still CG. You're not actually... Now, she's using some moves, and she's using some sword strikes and some things that I think will be gameplay, but it's not. Something like Naughty Dog's game, even that, it's tough to get too excited. Now, Naughty Dog helps carry it by name, right? When you think Naughty Dog, you might not actually just be absolutely in love with them. Everybody's taste is a little bit different, and everybody's stance on Naughty Dog is a little bit different, but, Naughty Dog kind of carries its own weight. At the same time, I would say from that trailer, interesting. I'm actually more interested in some of the deeper things. Lalo Salamanca, I believe, is one of the main characters of this game, which I saw people kind of analyzing. He's on the picture, when she's walking by it in the beginning of the trailer. Again, the issue I would say I have with that trailer is it was started in 2020. We are 5 years almost past that, and you showed that trailer. And the trailer, it sets the stage, I guess, for the space adventure, whatever you kind of want to classify the tone as. But yet again, I don't think you get the full tone. You definitely didn't get gameplay, right? Now you got in-game, you can tell the way she's moving. Those are Naughty Dog visuals. That is a cutscene within the game. But there's no gameplay. I don't really know what kind of game it is. And yes, we'll find that out eventually. But my main point here being, uneven show. I think it did have moments. I love seeing Mafia. I love seeing Split Fiction. Okami, having RGG announce their next game that may or may not be some sort of weird sleeping dog / Yakuza game that looked phenomenal. Also one of the better games of the show. There was good. I'm not sitting here saying that this show had nothing in it, but at the same time, again, you intersperse that. Is that a word? I think it is. You mix in. I'll use a dumbed down language I can understand. You mix in games that just don't interest me, which is, it's more on me, right? Like certain games just aren't going to get me. But you mix in those games, and then you mix in some of the bigger main reveals have that element that I just talked about, right? That they don't really get me anymore. And I honestly, I blame that on the Wonder Womans of the past. I blame that on Wolf Among Us. I blame that on Star Wars Eclipse. I blame it on Marvel's Wolverine. These games that are shown 3, 4, 5 years too early, I'm done. I'm tired of them. Again, like I can accept them to a degree, but they're always going to be met, at least nowadays, they're going to be met with a bit of skepticism. Even Okami, okay? Now, again, we can talk about how impactful that is. You think of the game from Ico, the creator of Ico, Shadow of the Colossus, and The Last Guardian. That's another one. You think about the name, you think about the legacy. The game itself, I mean, did it look interesting? Yes, it looked extremely interesting, but there wasn't a lot there. And a thing like Okami, again, you can talk about the impact and all that stuff. Jeff, after they showed it, Jeff talked about how it is now just entering production. Now, I imagine he means like full on, like not pre-production, production. That's at least 2 to 4 years. So that's just me. And I mean, this video is like all about me selfishly, and you can have different opinions than me. I guess where I sit now, it's just things have to be a little bit different to grab me. So I would not call it like I guess I wouldn't even call it a great show or even maybe a good show. I would say it was fine. If we're doing like a game review, and I don't give scores and stuff, but I'd say average. This was probably like a 5 out of 10 average show. It had its highs. It had games that got me, and it had, I think, maybe even a little bit more under the radar. Like the RGG game was like, okay, this is something that really speaks to me. It's not going to speak to everybody, but I think it's, again, it kind of is scarred. It's scarring because of the past, and it's like, okay, nowadays you can't show me a game that just started production. You can't end the show with Naughty Dog and in my opinion, show what you showed, because it's like, for me, for what it's worth, it's not enough. It's something that the game is almost 5 years in development, and you said gameplay, and I guess that's technically correct, but not really. Like, you didn't really show me what this game was, and that's okay. Like, a lot of these games I'm going to play, right? To kind of have my end thoughts here, I'm not anti-gaming. I'm not going to not get a lot of these games. In fact, I am going to get a lot of these games, but in terms of a show and, literally showing me, like, what does the future hold and how good can these games be, and getting you pumped, right? You think of, now, like, Astrobot winning a lot, that was cool. There was some cool winners of these awards. I want to talk about that just in a second. But in terms of, actually pumping you up for the future, it's difficult. It's difficult to actually do it. And in terms of my metric, did it really get me pumped for the future? Yes, but also not as much as I thought it was going to. I'd also like to say that Jeff Keighley didn't really overhype his own event this time. It was kind of everybody else. I mean, those 2 big games that everybody was talking about had to be Naughty Dog and Witcher 4. And again, those were 2 that got me to a degree, but at the same time, because of what they showed and because of the relation of how long we are to get The Witcher 4 is 3-4 years away, right? Maybe a little bit shorter, but it's probably 3+ years away. That's a long time, and I can only get so excited about trailers nowadays for a game that's 3 years away. And honestly, knowing what I now know, if you showed me the Wonder Woman for the first time, that trailer again, yeah, I probably would be less enthused because I would have that same kind of mentality. But final thing, in terms of the actual awards, it's something we've just talked about so much, leading into the show. I don't put stock, into it. These are, some of them maybe are my award winners, but some of them are not. And like, I guess the one thing I want to say though is in terms of Game of the Year, I do think it's important that Astro won. I'm not saying like your game, the game you wanted, didn't deserve it or whatever. Again, you make your own opinion. I'm talking about like from the larger gaming industry and my own personal biasness. For Astro to win, I hope shows Sony something. And it doesn't have to. It might not, actually, at the end of the day. But, I grew up on Crash Bandicoot. I grew up on Sly Cooper being my favorite game franchise, as you guys probably well know by now. I think it is cool that a platformer that captured it. So I don't want to make this an Astrobot review, but again, I'm not saying Final Fantasy didn't deserve it or Black Myth. I know there was a lot of people in my chat rooting for Black Myth. That's totally fair. Any game that you want to win Game of the Year is your Game of the Year. Doesn't matter what they pick. Doesn't matter what I pick. It matters what you pick. Okay, but I do think just from like the general people watching and journalists and game developers and game publishers, it could be important that Sony sees and says, oh, not just did Astrobot sell pretty well for the budget, but also look at it won all these awards, right? It won Game of the Year. That's a big deal. It also won like 3 or 4 other awards. Maybe we should do an Astrobot 2. Maybe we should bring back Sly just to kind of have more of these in rotation. I know I'm always trying to push like a narrative with this kind of stuff, but I do think that was important. I really do. So it's kind of where I want to leave it. It was fine. I spent 4.5 hours live streaming it. I am tired, and you can probably tell a little out of it, I think, in this video, but I did have fun. I appreciate all you guys watching this video. If you were there for the live stream, I truly appreciate it. And we're still here for games. I'm still going to cover all these games. It's just some of them don't get me as much as they used to. That's all. So I'll be covering a lot of these games in individual videos over the next couple days. And then if you don't think I'm going to cover Naughty Dog's game a lot leading in, obviously you're wrong. But we'll just leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.